Tatsuya Ichihashi, a name synonymous with horror and brutality in Japan. In 2007, he shocked the world with his cold-blooded and brutal crime, taking the life of Lindsay Ann Hawker, a young and vibrant British teacher. Her body was found in the bathroom of his Tokyo apartment, and this case stirred public opinion, leaving a shadow of horror and confusion. But this is just the beginning of a grim story. Behind this murder lie details that send chills down your spine. Who is this mysterious killer? And how did he manage to evade justice for 2 years? Why did his face become one of the most wanted in Japan? And what really happened on that fateful day? Stay with us and you will learn all the shocking details of this tragic and frightening story that shook not only Japan but the entire world. Tatsuya Ichihashi was one of those people whose life seemed unremarkable at first glance. Born and raised in Chiba Prefecture, he was a quiet and reclusive young man. His parents, respected members of society, were proud of their son, who entered university and studied physical education and sports. But behind this exterior lay a dark and troubling side that no one suspected. Lindsay Ann Hawker, a young British English teacher, came to Japan to fulfill her dreams. She was full of energy and loved her work, enjoying every minute in this amazing country. In March 2007, her life crossed paths with Tatsuya Ichihashi, and this meeting proved fatal. March 25, 2007, began as a normal day for Lindsay. She spent the morning teaching her students and planned to spend the rest of the day enjoying the spring warmth of Tokyo. At the same time, Tatsuya, who had been following Lindsay for some time, decided to put his sinister plan into action. He approached her on the street and persistently suggested they have coffee together. Despite her inner anxiety, she agreed, deciding it would be a simple, friendly gesture. They headed to his apartment where he promised to show her his sketch. When Lindsay entered Tatsuya's apartment, she had no idea that her life was about to end. As the door closed behind her, the world around her began to crumble. Tatsuya attacked her with cold determination, dragging her into the bathroom. There he began to beat and strangle her until life left her body. Lindsay fought desperately for her life, but Tatsuya was relentless. The reasons that drove him to this brutal murder remain a mystery. Perhaps it was his irresistible obsession with Lindsay, or deeply hidden psychological issues that pushed him to this step. The murder was not instantaneous. It was prolonged and torturous, leaving a trail of horror and pain. Tatsuya seemed to relish his power over the victim, satisfying his dark fantasies. After the murder, Ichihashi attempted to cover his tracks. He hid Lindsay's body in his home, burying it in sand in the bathroom, hoping no one would find it. He was cautious and methodical, trying not to leave the slightest trace. However, his plan failed when Lindsay's concerned colleagues and friends began to search for her. A few days later, the police discovered her body, and the world learned of the brutal crime. This case caused a wide resonance, shocking not only Japan but the entire world. The media covered every aspect of the case, and the public was shocked. Questions about Ichihashi's motives and mental state became the central topic of discussion. How could a person who seemed so ordinary commit such a monstrous crime? This story attracted the attention of psychologists and criminologists trying to unravel the nature of the evil, hiding behind an ordinary appearance. After the discovery of Lindsay's body, a large-scale police operation began to capture Tatsuya Ichihashi. He went on the run, managing to evade justice for almost 2.5 years. During this time, he changed his appearance, undergoing plastic surgery and living under assumed names. The police released his photo fits and declared him wanted, and the public followed the developments with bated breath. Ichihashi's arrest in November 2009 was the culmination of an intense investigation. He was detained at a construction site where he worked under a false name. Arrested and handcuffed, he faced justice. The trial was long and harrowing, revealing the dark details of the crime and the inner world of the criminal. The story of Tatsuya Ichihashi and Lindsay Ann Hawker remains one of the most terrifying and memorable criminal stories of our time. This tragedy makes us ponder how little we know about the people around us and what secrets can be hidden behind the most ordinary faces. After the horrifying crime, Tatsuya Ichihashi was gripped by panic, quickly replaced by cold calculation. Realizing that his life would end if he were caught, he began meticulously destroying evidence. He cleaned the apartment to a shine, eliminating all traces of the crime. He disposed of clothing and items that could incriminate him, but his attempts to escape didn't end there. Knowing that the police were closing in, Tatsuya decided to go on the run. He left the apartment and headed to the busiest areas of Tokyo, hoping to get lost in the crowd. Soon he realized he needed to leave the city. Buying a ticket on a night bus, he headed to another region and began a life on the move. Each day on the run was a test. He stayed in cheap motels, constantly changed his appearance by cutting, dyeing his hair, and altering his dress style. But soon he realized this wasn't enough. The police intensified their search, spreading his photos through all channels. Realizing his time was running out, Ichihashi decided on drastic measures: plastic surgery, finding an underground clinic where they agreed to change his appearance for a large sum of money. He altered his face beyond recognition. After the operations, even those closest to him wouldn't have recognized him. With a new face, he got a chance at a new life, but his nightmares didn't end. He continued to live in fear, constantly looking over his shoulder, avoiding contact with people, and changing places of residence. Using fake documents and aliases, he woke up every morning with the thought that he might be found. The fear of exposure never left him for a minute. He felt he was being watched, and each day seemed like his last day of freedom. The plastic surgeries not only changed his appearance, but also became the final step towards complete isolation. He could no longer trust anyone and lived in constant anxiety. In his new guise, he began working low-paying jobs, trying not to attract attention. But living in constant fear proved harder than he thought. He became paranoid, convinced that anyone who looked at him for more than a second might recognize him. Hiding from justice, Tatsuya also tried to hide from his conscience. At night, he was tormented by nightmares in which he repeatedly saw the face of his victim. He tried to drown these thoughts with alcohol and drugs, but it only worsened his condition. Meanwhile, the police never stopped searching. They combed every corner of the country, circulated his new photos, and warned the public about the possibility of encountering the dangerous criminal. Ichihashi knew that with each passing day, his chances of being caught increased. His new look couldn't hide his nervousness and anxiety, which became increasingly noticeable to those around him. So the story of Tatsuya Ichihashi is not just a tale of a crime. It's a story of fear, despair, and the attempt to survive at any cost. He tried to run not only from the law, but also from himself. His attempts to avoid justice turned his life into a hell filled with fear and distrust. After the discovery of Lindsay Ann Hawker's body, Tokyo police immediately launched an investigation. In the early hours, forensic experts thoroughly examined the crime scene, collecting all possible evidence: fingerprints, DNA traces, clothing fragments. Every detail could be the key to solving this murder. The police immediately began questioning the residents of the building and nearby structures to find out who might have seen or heard anything suspicious. The residents were shocked by the events, and many of them willingly shared information. Soon, the first clue appeared: a description of a man leaving the building on the day of the murder. The investigation gained momentum when the police turned to the media for help. Japanese and international press quickly responded, and news of the brutal crime spread across all channels. Photos of Lindsay and the suspect began to appear in the news, on the front pages of newspapers and online. This case became one of the main topics of discussion in Japan and beyond. The investigation attracted the attention of not only local residents, but also the international community. This placed significant pressure on the police, demanding quick results. The public also actively participated in the search. Social media users shared information, photos, and their suspicions. Some organized their own investigations, forming groups and discussing various versions of events. This public resonance became a powerful tool in the hands of the police, as every citizen could provide useful information. Despite all efforts, Tatsuya Ichihashi remained at large. He skillfully hid, changing places of residence and using fake documents. It seemed that the criminal had disappeared without a trace, leaving only a shadow of fear and uncertainty. However, the turning point came when the police received key information. Thanks to the efforts of one detective, a possible connection was identified between phone calls, CCTV footage, and witness testimonies. This allowed narrowing down the possible hideouts of the suspect. After months of investigation, the day came when the police managed to track down Ichihashi. One morning, an operation team surrounded the house where he was hiding. The operation was conducted quickly and professionally. Tatsuya Ichihashi was arrested without resistance, bringing an end to this terrifying nightmare for many people. By catching Ichihashi, The police were able to reconstruct in detail the events of that fateful day. It turned out that he had premeditated his actions, carefully preparing for the crime. Thanks to thorough investigation and professional work, all the details of his plan and motives became known. In November 2009, more than 2 years after Lindsay's disappearance, Tatsuya Ichihashi was finally caught. During this time, he meticulously hid, altered his appearance, and used fake documents. He underwent plastic surgeries to change the shape of his nose and eyes, and constantly changed hairstyles to make identification difficult. The decisive moment came when a resident of Osaka made a random call to the police, reporting a person resembling Ichihashi. He noticed him at a construction company where Tatsuya was working under a false name. The police immediately went to the scene. The operation to arrest him was quick and quiet. Ichihashi offered no resistance, as if resigned to the inevitable. He was found with fake documents and cash, indicating his preparation for a new escape. But luck had finally turned against him. The beginning of Tatsuya Ichihashi's trial caused a huge public resonance. The courtroom was packed with journalists, Lindsay Hawker's relatives, and curious onlookers wanting to see the man who had evaded justice for so long. The trial opened with loud statements from the prosecutor, who presented Ichihashi as a cold-blooded killer who committed a heinous crime and then went into hiding. The prosecution presented irrefutable evidence of his guilt. DNA traces found at the crime scene and on the victim's body, as well as eyewitness testimonies who saw Ichihashi on the day of the murder. Ichihashi's defense tried to present him in a different light, claiming that the murder was not premeditated and that Tatsuya's actions were the result of an impulsive decision caused by unexpected circumstances. The lawyers tried to soften his image, claiming he was sincerely remorseful. During the trial, Ichihashi himself made a confession, claiming he killed Lindsay accidentally during a sudden fit of rage. His words caused an outburst of emotions in the courtroom, especially among Lindsay's relatives. However, the prosecutors were adamant, presenting detailed evidence of the premeditation and brutality of the murder. They emphasized how Tatsuya meticulously covered his tracks and attempted to flee, demonstrating his cold calculation and lack of remorse at the time. After lengthy debates and consideration of all evidence, the court delivered its verdict. Tatsuya Ichihashi was found guilty of the murder of Lindsay Hawker and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The public received the verdict with relief and satisfaction. Lindsay's relatives expressed their contentment with the sentence, despite their grief. This trial became significant for the Japanese justice system, demonstrating that even such cunning criminals as Tatsuya Ichihashi cannot escape punishment. The story of his capture and trial served as a warning to other criminals, and an example of the perseverance and determination of justice in the end. The final act of this tragic story, the trial and sentencing, confirmed that justice can be slow but inevitable. When the truth about the brutal murder of Lindsay Ann Hawker became known, the public in Japan was in shock. In a country known for its safety and low crime rate, this case revealed hidden problems. Social networks, news publications, and television programs were filled with discussions and debates. People were horrified not only by the crime itself, but also by how long Ichihashi managed to evade justice. The emergence of details about his escape and life on the run caused a storm of emotions among the Japanese. Many felt fear and anxiety, realizing that such a dangerous criminal could remain free for so long. At the same time, Ichihashi's story became a lesson about the importance of vigilance and the need for precautions, especially among women. The case of Tatsuya Ichihashi became a catalyst for changes in legislation and police practices in Japan. After numerous mistakes and omissions during the investigation, the government and law enforcement agencies adopted a series of measures to improve their procedures. Measures to control suspects were strengthened. Stricter rules for tracking and surveillance of individuals under investigation were introduced. In addition, Ichihashi's case drew attention to the need for closer cooperation between international law enforcement agencies. As a result, new agreements and protocols aimed at improving information exchange and joint efforts to search for fugitive criminals were concluded. The name Tatsuya Ichihashi became a symbol of many social issues in Japan. First and foremost, it reminded of the problems related to attitudes towards foreigners and women in Japanese society. many began to speak about the need for stricter measures to ensure the safety of women, especially foreigners living and working in Japan. Moreover, this case made society reflect on the justice system and the rehabilitation of criminals. Discussions on how to prevent such tragedies in the future led to active debates about criminal law reform and the need for a more humane approach to the resocialization of former convicts. Thus, Tatsuya Ichihashi's case left a deep mark on Japanese society. It caused significant changes in legislation and police practices, and reminded of the need for vigilance and care for safety. Although Ichihashi's name became a symbol of horror and pain, it also served as a catalyst for positive changes and deep reflections on the future of society. In conclusion, we can say that Tatsuya Ichihashi's case not only shocked but also made us think about the dark sides of human nature. His cold-bloodedness, calculation, and attempt to escape justice send shivers down our spines. Every detail of this story, from the brutal murder to the years-long attempts to hide, makes us question: what drives such people? What are their true motives? And what are the consequences of their actions for society? It is important to remember that such stories are not just grim tales we listen to for adrenaline. These are real events happening in our world. Tatsuya Ichihashi's story serves as a reminder of the need for vigilance and concern. We must pay attention to what is happening around us and not be afraid to report suspicious actions. Thank you for your attention and for staying with us throughout this grim story. Subscribe to our channel, share this video, and leave your comments. See you next time. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.